What's going on, everyone? Ryan here, and WWDC 2021 has come and gone, and it has left us feeling some kind of way. I'm going to be diving into some of the stuff that Apple discussed and revealed to us yesterday. I'm going to be giving a little bit more insight into the stuff that I was live tweeting yesterday. We're going to take a look at everything, the positives and the negatives. Now, I do want to frame this video by saying two things. One, these are all just my opinions. You may not necessarily share the opinions, and that's fine. We don't have to share those opinions, but what I'm expressing is just how I'm feeling about it based on my day-to-day usage and what I do with my Apple products. And number two, WWDC has always just been about software. So if you went into this and came out kind of sour because you didn't get any type of hardware, that's on you. Anyway, here we go. So I want to talk very, very briefly about the intro. The intro that we received here, initially, like the waiting screen is kind of cool. Tim Cook walking out to a theater full of memojis was a little on the creepy side. I get what they were trying to do. It was kind of cute, but it was also just a little creepy. Anyway, it is what it is. It's over and done with at this point. Let's move on to iOS 15. So we got Craig, Mr. Fantastic Hair, coming out with iOS 15, or what was our first look at it. And his initial focus was on FaceTime, and in particular was the voice isolation and wide spectrum audio. We'll get into the wide spectrum part here in a second, but the voice isolation was pretty cool. The demonstration, touch over the top, but it really got the point across. Essentially, I'll show it to you now, but it was a lady talking on a FaceTime call, and then someone else came up in behind her with what appeared to be a leaf blower. I can't imagine any real life scenarios in which this is going to happen. But it really did get the point across with how powerful voice isolation is going to be. Something else that we're getting with FaceTime are going to be tiles, essentially, that are going to highlight those that are speaking, which means that the likelihood of you not being able to figure out who's talking in a group chat is going to go out the window. Apple's been able to give us this visual identification of which one of us is yammering on in that group chat. Something that I was super excited to see, and it's very uncharacteristically Apple to open up like this, FaceTime links. Now let me explain what those are. If you're having a FaceTime conversation, FaceTime is going to give you the option of sharing that group or room, if you will, link to anybody that is using a different platform. So for instance, let's say somebody is using a Windows computer, or you have a friend on a device that is green bubble, so to speak, you'll be able to send them that link. That link is going to give them access to your FaceTime conversation. You heard that right. FaceTime on Android. What? I honestly don't think that anybody saw this coming. I do think that it's really cool. I have a lot of friends that use iPhone, but I do have a lot of friends that use Android as well. And in a point in time, like a pandemic, for instance, and you want to have these face-to-face conversations with somebody, being able to access FaceTime on other devices, both computer and on mobile, fantastic. Good on you, Apple. We're also getting a new feature that they're calling SharePlay. It integrates with something else called Shared With You. And the long and short of it, and I'm going to touch on it a little bit later because it's integrated with other services and features, is that if you have a friend or a family member or somebody that you talk to that shares either a video or music with you, you can either watch or listen to those at the exact same time, completely in sync. So you're seeing the same thing, hearing the same thing at the exact same time. And something very similar in terms of Apple News. So if somebody were to share an article with you that you may not necessarily have the time to read right away, it allows you to save that, and Apple News is going to remember who sent that to you. And then once you've had a chance to read whatever that article was, you tap on the individual's name up at the top, and it's going to allow you to carry on the conversation from where it left off on that article. Pretty cool. Definitely saw a trend blooming throughout WW that gives you the idea that this whole sharing and to be honest, kind of like social distancing is being taken very seriously by Apple, which is great to see. Again, I'm going to touch a little bit more on that as we progress through, you're going to see where that's integrated in different Apple products. We moved on to messages next, and I don't want to say that this was a bit of a letdown, but I do want to say that I think we were all expecting more than what we received, especially since the WWDC 2021 or 21 hashtag on Twitter had a little, usually like an iMessages icon beside it of some type, a thumbs up, a heart, exclamation point, question mark, whatever. Something like that was trending for days leading up to the event. And then when we got to it, wasn't much of anything. We're going to be getting a new collage format for photos. So when somebody sends you photos, or if you receive photos, you're going to be able to flip through them. You won't have to leave the app, basically. So as it is now, if you were to look at the photos, sometimes you'll actually have to go into the Photos app and just kind of take a quick peek at everything. It's like preview. You're not going to have to do that anymore. You can actually flip through, rearrange, what have you, right in the Messages app. It's convenient, but I mean, that was really the only thing that we saw with Messages. There's a few other integrations. Again, the shared with you thing is very tightly integrated into that. Just shared anything, really. But yeah, that was it. And I left that section of DebDub feeling a little bit like, that's it? That's all we get? Okay. Share with you, as I said, bit of a trend. It is being integrated into multiple apps, which I'm going to show you here and talk about a little bit. Photos, music, news, Safari, podcasts, and Apple TV. All of that stuff is going to have some form of a shared or shared with you tab or some type of a structure integrated into it. So anything where you can essentially consume media, you're going to have that available to you. Since I talked music there very briefly, I just want to point out something that kind of struck me as a little weird or funny, I guess. I just kind of laughed when I saw it. Mindy, the presenter for this particular part, listened to literally 2.2 seconds of a song and then determined, I love that. I'm adding that to my list. You heard maybe 2 bars of a drum beat. Do you love that? Do you really? All right, moving on. I'm being nitpicky at this point. Just to kind of roll that whole thing together, honestly, the Messages part just seemed kind of forced. It didn't really need its own entire topic. And like I said, it came out of that feeling kind of like, there's a lot more that you could have done with it. I get it though. Like, I'm not in charge of that sort of thing. I really have no say, but as an end user, consumer, even now as a content creator focused on Apple product, I was just really hoping for something a little bit more than what we got. I mean, it leaves the door open for future iterations. I get that, but it was a little disappointing. So next up, we got a look at notifications, and there was a huge focus on, focus. We're going to start to see integrations of things like profiles, for instance. And with the profiles, what we were able to see through DubDub was that personal and work can be separated from one another. And then you have Do Not Disturb, which is essentially an entity all on its own, which I'll touch on here in a second. The glory of how they're setting this up is that you can determine what notifications you will receive when your profile is set to personal versus when it's set to work. So for instance, if you have apps that are directly related to work, let's say like Google Chat or even WhatsApp or whatever you might use for your business, you can set it up that if you are on the personal profile, those apps do not notify you. Fantastic. Do Not Disturb, on the other hand, can block virtually everything. The neat integration that we're getting with Do Not Disturb is that if somebody is trying to send you an iMessage, it will straight up say at the bottom, X person is currently set to Do Not Disturb. You will send your message, and if it's really important, there's going to be a button there that says send anyway, or basically allow it to go through Do Not Disturb. Because alternatively, what's going to end up happening is that the message is just going to kind of sit in the background until the individual you're sending that to shuts Do Not Disturb off. Bit tongue-tied, sorry. Personally, I think That whole thing is huge. I am a firm believer in having a decent work-life balance. Right now, for instance, with what I do for my regular day job and this YouTube content creation, I try to keep the two as separated as I can. But to be able to separate what you do as your regular day job from any type of hobbies or personal life that you have is very, very important, and it's fantastic for overall mental health. Apple themselves did in fact talk about mental health a little bit later, which we will dive into. We didn't have much of a segue into the next one. Craig did a lot of talking, but basically he wanted to talk about something called live text. And live text is a service or a functionality that has been in existence for a while. I'm fairly certain Google has something like this, but the gist of it is that you're able to take a photo of something that has legible text on it, and iOS will now be able to discern what that legible text is, and it'll allow you to copy and paste that elsewhere if you need to or want to. I can see that this would be very beneficial if you're taking a photo of an ad or something like that. Whereas at the same time, I'm like, well, you took the photo of that ad. That photo is saved. Phone number's still there. But whatever. It's neat. It's neat to have something like this finally integrated into iOS, and it's nice to see that iOS is branching out and becoming something larger than it has been previously. Man, let me tell you, Spotlight has been hitting the gym. The update that we are getting for Spotlight is massive. Any type of search that you are doing is going to give you more results now than you're going to know what to do with. They demonstrated certain things like pulling up businesses and celebrities and artists and photos and stuff like that. And the amount of information that Spotlight was able to provide was huge. It was more than I think anybody would ever really need to consume if you're doing a Spotlight search. Definitely beneficial, absolutely beneficial, especially if you are searching up, let's say, a content creator by the name of Ryan Furst, and you wanted to know everywhere where I would be. I'm not saying that I'm big enough to be on that yet, but you give it time. It's going to show you any and all information that it can find on me, all social links. If you needed to find somebody in terms of, the greater population, it's going to be easy to do so. And I don't mean that in a creepy way, so don't be up to any shady stuff. Apple Music is getting an integration into Photos as well, more specifically into the Memories tab. So if you're unfamiliar with Memories, what that does is it essentially curates particular photos from either a trip or a point in time or an event, and it's going to show you everything as a collage. Now what's neat is that Memories is able to basically create a slideshow of those particular photos. My wife absolutely loves this sort of thing. So if we were to go on a trip or something like that, Photos automatically aligns all of the photos that we would have taken on that trip, puts them in particular orders based on date and timestamp, and you would have some type of almost like a royalty-free type music playing in the background, which is to chipper it up, if you will. But now Apple Music is going to integrate in such a way that it's going to intelligently determine the song that it can play, an actual song for a particular event. As cool and, kind of uplifting as that could be, I could also see it backfiring. You want to know an example of backfiring? Imagine Dragons. If you watch the conference, you know what I'm talking about. So we get three things, basically all quick fire, just rapid shot. We had wallet, weather, and maps. There's only a few incremental changes here. There wasn't anything too big, so I'll just touch on them real briefly. So wallet is finally getting photo identification cards. So if you want to throw your driver's license in wallet, have at it. But only if you live in the United States. So people like me that live elsewhere, I live in Canada, we're out of luck, at least for now. Which sucks, because this is something I was really looking forward to. It was something I really wanted to get. I'm sure we will get it eventually. There's probably some type of like a legal ring that Apple will have to jump through on that one. But it's neat to see that they're finally making progress towards something like that. The other thing, this is something that's been discussed previously, historically, with both, software and hardware keynotes from Apple. Almost said upware. What even is upware? It's nothing. Is it something? So vehicle manufacturers are actually going to start shipping vehicles later this fall that work with the U1 chip. Why is that cool? You can unlock your car with your phone now. They're going to start off with BMW. I can't ever see myself owning a BMW. Personal take. But I mean, I definitely see how that's cool. This fall, in particular, Hyatt hotels, they're going to start sending out access cards to anybody that uses an iPhone or basically an iOS device. And it's going to give you your little access card inside the Wallet app, which is pretty cool. Having been in and out of hotels a few times in my life, sometimes keeping track of those cards is a little bit of a nightmare. So yeah, there's a definite convenience with this sort of thing. Weather didn't get too much of an update. It was mostly just like a visual overhaul in certain things. So like wind, UV, barometric pressure, those all got new icons. There's going to be new animations based on the weather of where you're at. Apparently though, let's say it's a sunset or something like that, the sun is actually going to set in the weather app in the same direction of which you're standing, or at least that's what I took away from what was said. I could be totally misunderstanding that, but basically from the animation, it's going to be intelligent based on where you are physically located and where like the sun is positioned or the direction of the clouds or whatever. I mean, we'll have to see if that's actually what it is or if I'm completely fabricating that. I don't think that I am, but I mean, that's what I took away from it. Yeah. Maps is becoming a lot more detailed, which is good. Apple has to be very careful with maps. Get into that in a second. But basically what they appear to have done is make things far easier to see in terms of structures like buildings. They've added some greenery in there. They've shown you specifically where crosswalks are. They've got better detection of where stoplights are and just stuff like that. And they've put a few other smaller improvements in to assist in terms of directional control. But maps, like I said, Apple has to be careful. They really have to be careful. It used to be super meme worthy. Like if you want to have a bit of a history lesson, I mean, you remember apps from iOS 6? You remember maps from iOS 6, Craig? Greg, do you remember Scott Forstall? Hello?
Gotta drop. Bye.
AirPods were mentioned a few times. The big takeaways that I got from AirPods was essentially AirPods Pro are basically shotgun mics now, which is pretty cool. If you don't know what a shotgun mic is, as a matter of fact, I'm actually using one right now. It is a microphone that when pointed directly at you, it's just like a tube, it will really only ever pick up what's directly in front of it. And where this comes into play is that if you are in transparency mode and there's somebody that you're trying to have a conversation with, the AirPods are essentially going to focus right on that individual. So all the ambient sound, ambient noise, whatever, you're not going to have to worry about that, which is really, really cool. We're also getting much better Find My integration with AirPods. I can't say that I've ever had this type of issue, but I know a lot of people do, where you may misplace your AirPods Pro or your AirPods Max, and those are the two specific headphones that were brought up in this example, where it's going to start using the proximity sensor with Find My, so it's going to help you find your headphones a lot easier. And they did also mention that when you're within a certain range, you can chime the headphones so you'll be able to hear it. Even AirPods Pro now are going to start making the sound even if it's inside of the case. Albeit it's probably not going to be super loud. Probably not much louder than what you would get out of AirTags, for instance, but it's still better than nothing. It'll still help. Okay, let's talk spatial audio again because it came up yet again. It's coming to tvOS and it's coming to macOS, and I think these are fantastic. There's a lot of conversation that I saw floating around, specifically on Twitter, super active there. So if you're not following me, let's be friends. But basically what I'm seeing is that a lot of people are like, well, why is tvOS getting that? Who's watching TV with their AirPods? This guy. I actually do it a lot. And based on the conversation that I saw, there's a lot of individuals that are in the same boat as myself. Now, I get it. I do get it. Where that might seem a little silly to have your AirPods connected to your Apple TV, and you're kind of just you're watching your show and you're just sitting there with your AirPods in, and like your TV has speakers, so why? Well, I mean, it is partially for that immersion into what you're watching, but at the same time, if there's somebody else in that room that's doing something entirely different, like let's say you're sitting with somebody and they're reading a book and they don't want to be bothered with whatever you're watching. Yeah, like something like that maybe. That's when AirPods come into play. Spatial audio is definitely handy with that. Now, I can see why it would make more sense for a lot of you on macOS. There's a lot of media consumption that's done through your MacBook or your iMac or what have you. But there seemed to be a lot of confusion around tvOS. Just want you guys to know, people do use AirPods with tvOS. It happens. Oh, iPad OS. We got to pour one out for the M1 iPads. This was sad, wasn't it? This is probably the most disappointing part of WWDC, and I feel like I'm not alone in feeling that way. So since I brought up the M1 iPads, I do have an unboxing and an first impressions video of the 11-inch M1 iPad Pro coming. Despite everything that happened at WWDC, I'm not going to be returning it. But if you're interested in seeing that, I'm going to be unboxing the white Magic Keyboard as well. Make sure that you subscribe and hit that bell so that you get notified when that video hits. It's going to be very, very soon. All right, shameless plug over. I do want to say seriously that the iPad OS revealing was disappointing for me. For me, you may have loved it, and that's fair. You can love it. But for myself, I was really, really hoping to see pro apps of some variation coming to the iPad, simply because we are running the M1 processor in the newest iPads, which gives them the same computing power as, let's say, the iPad Air M1, or even to a degree, the M1 MacBook Pro. And yet here we are, still basically running a modified version of iOS, and we get nothing more for it. That hurt. That really felt like we were getting stabbed to a degree. I saw a lot of people online saying that they were going to be returning their M1 iPad Pros for this reason alone. You do you, boo, but for me, I'm going to keep it. I still love iPad. I use iPad all the time. I'm using iPad to review notes for this video. I mean, the use is still there. But I was really, really hoping for Final Cut Pro on iPad. What was revealed instead? Larger widgets that you can put wherever you want. An app library that has a little library icon that goes in the dock. You know, how Android does. And really slightly redesigned multitasking. You know, 3 things nobody asked for this time around. Again, I just want to go back to it. These are just my opinions. This is just how I feel. I was real salty around this point in time. I love Apple. I love what Apple does. I am super sucked into that ecosystem. But man, I was so upset with how little they did with iPad OS. There's so much more that could have been done with it, especially now with the M1 processors, so much more. And instead, no, here you go, have bigger widgets. You know what? All right, we're done. I'm sorry. I'm ranting. I'm going on. We gotta move on. I'm sorry. If there's any other creators out there that are watching this, or even aspiring creators, or somebody that you just generally uses Final Cut Pro, I wonder, do you feel the same way that I do? Let me know in the comments, because I need somebody to cry with. We got to see hashtags are coming in notes for some reason. Can kind of see where there's a use for that, but like, really? Anyway, then we get into the good stuff. Like the really good stuff. The stuff that like I really actually loved to see is Apple's privacy section. Oh yeah, let's talk. So the long and the short of it, it seems like Apple has aspirations of moonlighting as a VPN provider at this point, and I'm all here for it. I am so here for it. They're going to be tightening up restrictions in Mail and Safari, so I'm going to break that down for you just so you kind of understand where they're coming from on that one and what they're going to be doing for you. So let's say you get a phishing email. Everybody gets phishing emails. You probably have a handful in your inbox right now. When you open that email, even if you don't engage with anything inside of that email, it's still able to get information from you. Bet you thought you were safe if you didn't click that link. You're wrong. As Apple explains it, there are micropixels inside of those emails, inside the body of that email, and it's going to gather information about you. So one of the things that it will gather is this email address real? Did somebody actually open this email? And if so, date and timestamp. Boom, gone. And then one of the other important things that it could reveal would be your IP address, for instance. So what were you using and where were you using it when you opened this email? Now, why this is dangerous is that it could take this information, it can ship it off to other nefarious companies that are doing very similar things, and before you know it, your email address is all over the dark web. No bueno. So what Apple has done in an effort to combat this sort of thing is integrate hard stops. So if any of that information is attempting to leave and go where it shouldn't be going, Apple's going to stop that, and it's going to notify you about that as well. And then there's another integration into Safari, which they're calling Private Relay. Private Relay is going to behave almost exactly as what you would expect a VPN to do. So it's going to keep anything and everything that you do online very private. And we already have something like that in terms of like the privacy report. It, to a degree, acts as literally a report to let you know what's trying to grab your information. But Apple's going just that step further, and they're going to block any of that information from going without your permission, which is awesome. I'm not gonna lie, at first when Apple was kind of going down this privacy path, I was a little skeptical. I kind of felt like, are you just kind of like what is this? Because it was right at a point in time where privacy was becoming, very forethought for everyone. I think it was like hot off the heels of Facebook being taken to court from that one, I can't even remember. It was like a data analytics company that they were involved with. I cannot for the life of me remember their name. But then even more recently, we've seen updates of Facebook being in trouble with Apple, or rather kind of because of what Apple has done with iOS 14 and the whole privacy tracker thing and whatnot. So honestly, at the end of this section of the conference, I think I could really actually feel the Zuck ferociously punching the air. Anybody else feel that? It was really funny. I was just honestly sitting there thinking about what his reaction was. He was watching it. He was. I'm going to move on to Siri. Siri got two main boosts, but these are fantastic. One I felt was a little bit more powerful than the other, so I'm going to save the best for last on that one. But the first thing that they really talked about, or really demonstrated and showed with what they were doing with Siri, were new, smoother, more natural voice for Siri, which honestly in the demonstration was really good. To be totally honest, I played it for my wife and I said, listen, if you had this voice just play for you and you didn't know what Siri was, would you think this is a real person? And she's like, yeah. Cool. So we have some ex machina stuff on our hands at this point. When you don't realize that you're actually talking to AI, that's pretty cool. The second part would be the fact that Siri now has what they're calling on-device processing. And why this is beneficial is because Siri doesn't have to bounce your queries or your commands off of Apple servers and then back to the phone to ensure that, it does what it's supposed to do. Now Siri is going to be able to figure out everything right on that device, which makes things so much faster. This whole process was demoed by a presenter by the name of Eric, and Eric was going in and out of different commands and applications using just only Siri, and it was really, really quick. I was actually super impressed This is going to be something very beneficial for somebody that uses Siri on the regular, and I do. I use Siri every day. I have a smart home, so I control the lights, I control the thermostat, I control HomePod with it, for instance. So this sort of thing I think is going to be phenomenal. Got a couple of updates to iCloud as well. One of them seems very helpful. The other one, also helpful, kind of dark. So the first thing that they talked about for iCloud was essentially, safe and rescue contacts. So people that you can set up that you trust, that if you were to lose access to your iCloud account, they would receive either a message or a notification, which will allow you to regain access to your iCloud account. I do know a few people that could benefit from something like this, just individuals that I've tried helping in terms of like resetting their secret questions. They had no idea what the answers were and that sort of thing. So I could definitely see a benefit in this. The second part, kind of dark, but also useful. Legacy contacts. So certain social medias have legacy contacts built into them already. And for some reason, I always feel like this is such a dark topic. But let's say, for instance, that you are no longer among the living. You can have a contact set up so that if you were in fact to pass, they have control over your iCloud and your Apple devices going forward. Clear that search history. All right, let's move to the polar opposite from death, and we're going to start talking about life, specifically health and well-being. So health sharing is being integrated into iOS 15, and some quick notes on that. Basically what it means is that you're going to be able to set up friends and family members that use an Apple Watch. Fairly certain that you need an Apple Watch for this sort of thing. And it's going to allow you to see where they're at, not necessarily just with their activity levels, but also just overall metrics of health. So let's say you have a friend or a family member that has some type of a respiratory issue or an elevated heart rate. You can actually receive notifications and trends based on how that sort of thing is playing out for that individual. So it allows you to keep a very close eye on the health of your loved ones. Like I said, I'm fairly certain this sort of thing is dependent upon whether that individual has and or uses an Apple Watch and has all of their health metrics set up on there. I feel like it's going to be very difficult in any other way to be able to keep an eye on something like that. So if you have somebody that you care about that has an Apple Watch and doesn't use it, but you want to use this feature, you got to get on them about that. So we jump into WatchOS from this point. We start talking about health and fitness, and in my opinion, it's kind of ironic, simply because the presenter, Kevin, really seemed like he was getting run over by a cold. At least his voice was super nasal. I mean, it's rude. Sorry, Kevin. But yeah, his voice was kind of nasally. So who knows? He could have been congested or whatever. A little, getting a little deterred here. Let's go back. So the Breathe app is going to get a visual overhaul, just a little bit. I don't personally use Breathe. I mean, I don't really ever forget how to breathe or when to breathe. It's getting overhauled. We're also getting a Reflect app, which is going to help you kind of think back on positive and negative things and how to basically try to boost positive psychological. You know what? I'm just going to straight up say I can feel like this is going to backfire. I feel like Reflect might be more of a trigger for some people, but I mean that's just me. So those two apps are actually going to be built into one app now. At least that's what I took away from the conference. And the app's going to be called the Mindfulness app. WatchOS 8 is now going to be able to keep an eye on your respiratory levels, as I mentioned previously with the health trends for loved ones. And that was pretty much it. They didn't really talk about it too much. Updated watch faces and stuff like that. But that's normal. That's kind of what we expect whenever we go to a new iteration of WatchOS. Yeah. It's time for HomeKit. This guy's got like the coolest name. Since we're talking about, I want to bring up that this guy looks like he could bench press my car. I want to see this. This guy's like a single pec is like the size of my entire chest. He looks strong. Anyway, sorry, I'm getting off topic. Let's move on, yeah? Yeah. Jeez. So the Share Play and Shared With You features that I mentioned earlier, they're getting integrated with HomeKit. So you're actually going to be able to utilize commands through Siri, which is also integrated, to launch things that were shared with you in both music and Apple TV. And something that I think is phenomenal for this HomeKit integration with Siri and other things is that now Siri is being opened up for third-party HomeKit manufacturers, which means that we are going to start to see Siri integrated on devices that were not made by Apple. And that is awesome. Again, that's very uncharacteristically Apple. It's not something that I think any of us really ever expected them doing. Are we going to complain about it? No, probably not. It's cool. HomePod, specifically HomePod Mini, got a call out multiple times in this section, and there's a lot happening to it. So I'm going to just kind of go down the list and scrape the surface on some of that. So HomePod Mini is now going to be able to be set up as the primary audio output for Apple TV, which I think is awesome. I have one HomePod Mini that we have in our living room right now, but I can see that I'm probably going to get another one simply to use for this. And on top of that sort of thing, HomePod Mini is also getting support for lossless audio. Do I foresee HomePod Mini sales taking off? Highly yes. It was already a really popular speaker. I mean, its price point is phenomenal. Its sound quality for something of its size is incredible as well. And now with the support that it's going to be getting with Apple tvOS and lossless audio, it's the speaker to beat at this point. HomePod Mini is also going to start to be released in new countries and regions, so it's already available all over the place. But within the next month, Apple did say that they're going to be releasing it in Austria, Ireland, and New Zealand, and that Italy is going to be added to that list by the end of the year. On top of that, voice recognition is going to be available everywhere HomePod Mini is sold. So that's really cool too. Not too much went on otherwise for HomeKit. Some people are jokingly saying that they saw Apple Car in the background there. I'll show you a quick photo of that now. I don't think that was really anything. It was just a filler. Actually, a quick glance to me, it kind of looked like the Cybertruck, but I don't know. That might just be me. At this point, we just kind of moved on to the Apple Watch Home app update. So it's not necessarily an update to WatchOS specifically or even HomeKit, but the Home app on Apple Watch is going to get integrations for things like intercom, and if you have cameras around the house, smart cameras for instance, doorbell cameras, you're going to have access to all of that stuff right from your Apple Watch. Apple Watch is also going to be able to unlock your house going forward, which I think is really cool too. And lastly, on this type of topic, since I did just bring up the cameras, you're going to be able to get notifications for package detection now too. So if a particular courier tries to tell you that they delivered a package or tried to deliver a package and yet you saw nothing, yeah. So from here we moved into macOS, which is now going to be named Monterey. To round up a lot of what's changing with Monterey, to be honest, basically everything aforementioned previously that's going into iOS and iPadOS in one way, shape, or form is being built into Monterey. There's a lot of different uses on Mac for the stuff that we had talked about previously. The only thing that I feel is kind of left out on the cold there, again, it's like my personal digs, hashtags on notes. Why? Anyway, we're getting a new sidecar experience. They're calling it Universal Control. And at first, it didn't look that cool. Like it was just it was literally like sidecar, cool, but now you don't have to hit an icon to get into it. It just happens. Where this started getting even cooler though is that it wasn't necessarily just an extension of the Mac screen. You're actually able to control what's going on let's say your iPad screen with the cursor from your Mac. So you can actually use the cursor on your MacBook and control what's going on the iPad. What's more is that it's not just isolated to those two devices now. You can actually have a third device. So let's say I had an iMac here in front of me, I have a MacBook and an iPad. I can control all three of them seamlessly across the board. Now that is awesome. I nearly had a heart attack when they said that we are finally getting AirPlay on Mac. iOS to Mac. Finally. It's like 8 years late, but I mean, better late than never. But like, damn, why did it take you this long? If you like that, if you are just as excited about that as I am, you should hit that like button. I love you. Okay, moving on. Shortcuts are coming to Mac too. Definitely see the benefit in something like that. Shortcuts are super useful. I get that. I don't personally use them myself. I have. It's not something that I use on a day-to-day basis. But I do know a lot of you out there do use shortcuts. So if you think that there's a particular shortcut that you think that I should be using, just to try out or whatever, leave a comment below, because I am in fact interested in giving shortcuts a try. I just don't really know where to start. So I would love to get the input from any of you watching this video. Safari is getting a massive overhaul. Now, this section of WWDC was kind of, I keep saying WWDC, it's whatever. That's what we're calling it now. It's forever just going to be WWDC. That's it. So this part, as I was saying, kind of messy, because it's not isolated to just Mac, and I'll get into that in a second. I'm going to show you a quick video of what came from WWDC. You see, there you go. I called it a normal thing. Anyway, I'm going to show you what it looks like, because it's really hard to explain. Essentially, tabs are being completely reworked. There's a massive visual overhaul that is coming to Safari here. Basically what Apple's trying to do is make Safari cleaner, crispier, a little bit more organized, fantastic for those with OCD. It's going to be a little bit of a learning curve though, in all fairness, but I do really, really like the look of it. Now, they kind of buried the lead in there though, because they're doing the exact same thing on iOS and iPadOS, but they didn't mention it at all in those particular sections. So they were kind of all over the place on this one. Still happy to see that Safari is getting this overhaul. Jumping from tab to tab is going to be something. It's I haven't tried it. I'm not running the betas right now. I kind of have this rule of thumb where I won't load the first or second beta usually, although they are out there for developers, not condoning using them, because especially on a daily driver, there's a potential of you bricking it, and that's no bueno. I do really want to try out this Safari, because this whole moving from tab to tab and just how the layout's going to work and how it looks and all that, like it's really cool. It looks really neat. It looks really modern, really refreshed. So I would say that in terms of the Mac section of this, and like not only just the Safari thing, but AirPlay coming to Mac and just everything else that we're getting, the Mac section easily was the part that got me the most excited out of any of it. We are also getting web extensions to Safari on iOS and iPad. So this is what I meant when the Safari part was kind of muddy. So if you use things like, and this is not an ad, Grammarly or Honey or something along those lines, you're already using those on your Mac. You can now use those on iOS and iPadOS, or at least when you get these updates. And that's really cool. Again, it's something people have been asking for a while, and I think Apple just in their way, they're like, oh, we'll do this in our time, you know? But we're here. We're finally here. This is that time. So awesome. So this pretty much brought that conference to a close, at least for your regular end user. So for most of you that are watching this, if you were a developer, they finished off with some AR stuff, some coding in Swift, and, you know, just regular dev stuff. But in terms of what the end user is really going to benefit from is everything that I just kind of topped off there for you. All in all, I do have to say, Again, I love Apple. I love what they do. I love their product. I love their software. It's very clean. I'm not saying that I don't like Android. I have Android phones kicking around this house, and I do jump back and forth. But Apple's definitely my go-to. I will say that this conference did not feel as polished or just well put together as, let's say, the Spring Loaded event from earlier this year, or even any of the hardware events from last year. This one didn't have that same type of production quality, or at least that's how it felt to me. You might disagree, and that's fair. Again, these are just my opinions on the whole thing. But I mean, nonetheless, still enjoyed it. iPad was a huge letdown. I think some of us were expecting it to be, unfortunately. But the rest of it was pretty cool. We'll just have to see how everything pans out. Anyway, let me know what you thought of the conference. I know that there's a lot of different emotions and opinions out there, so if you watched it and you had something to say about it, let's talk below. I want it to be nice and friendly, so no bashing of anything like that. But let's just talk. Where were your expectations and what ended up happening? based on those expectations. Anyway, if you're new here and you made it this far and you liked this video, I'd love it if you subscribed. If you're not new here, you won the game. Take care, everyone. I'll see you in the next one.